Hello, everybody, and for the last time in 2020, welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything that revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
And my name is James.
Yeah, last day of the year.
Yeah, it's been a bit like that, hasn't it?
It's last day of the year. Like, it's crept up on suddenly tomorrow's 2021. And it's that feeling of, what a shit year. Well, the news is that next year's not going to start any better. It's not like
Brilliant, yeah.
Just because 2020 is ending tomorrow, like ending today, tomorrow's going to be a brighter, better future.
It's that one I always say about New Year's Eve. I always stay in because everybody gets blind drunk and then realise they get to midnight and their life is still as shit as it was the year before. It's just a different year. All week what I hear on the news is, I can't wait to get rid of this year. I'm afraid to say, guys, no one's out of anybody's woods, right? The winter of 2021 is still going to be really, really bad. So look, stay safe. It's kind of the message at the end, but I think we should say it now as well. Stay safe.
Indeed. Yes. And whatever you're doing tonight, sitting at home on your own, having a beer or a glass of Prosecco or whatever it may be, enjoy yourselves. Game week 16 is over. The one after the wild card.
The one after the first wild card. However, for first wild cards, most will have gotten away with this quite a bit because of wild card into possibly no Man City, no Tottenham. I mean, you take us on our strategy, Suj. If Tottenham had had a double game week and Man City have had a double game week, we might have had 6 or 7 players ourselves this week.
Yes, yeah.
So
I mean, we've seen horror stories,
felt,
right? There are some absolute horror stories. One of my cousins messaged me, someone he knew had triple City, double Spurs, double Everton.
Yeah.
Ouch. How many players did you manage to get out in the end?
11.
Okay, not bad. I managed
11.
to get 10.
And the only one I lost was Kane. Justin 2-pointer come off the bench, which I didn't think he'd participate at Palace. So it scraped an 11-pointer, to be fair. I saw some teams with De Bruyne, Diaz, and like Cancelo, Kane, Son, Dyer, Calvert-Lewin. I mean, that's 7, and that's 7 big players, right?
It's not even. It's when you look at it, people are talking about like 80% of their budget being out of action,
wiped out. Yeah, so don't beat yourself up. It's just incredibly bad luck that if that's the way it landed for you. The good news is, I think for a lot of people, that's going to be players who've carried through.
Yeah.
So perhaps don't have chips or are planning not to use chips, for example, are probably the ones that have been worse affected by this game week 16. It might be that you now land in an incredible position for 18-19, and the rest of us who plan to use our chips are looking at it and possibly going, I'm not going to bother, actually. In terms of rearrangement of Everton-Man City
before we get into that, can I just say that for the first time this season, one of us has a rank that only has 6 numbers in it. Get in, son. 900 and something K.
I had a game week rank of about 250,000. He's still got a point more than me.
Yeah. Yeah. I had only 10 players this week. Cancelo out, which was perfect for Stuart Dallas to come off the bench. And then obviously Sonny didn't play as well. And Soufal was dropped or rotated or whatever you want to call it. So I ended up rolling out 10 players. But yeah, up into the top million. Here we go now.
Did you get 60?
Yeah.
Nice.
Decent score, all things considered. I mean, it was a BPS week for me because Robertson max BPS, Dallas max BPS, McCarthy picked up a couple of bonus points as well. So yeah, that's where it kind of sort of came in. And when you think Vardy was only on the bench, Chadham's had an awful game. Well, can't blame him. He did get.
I'm very glad for the. I'm very glad for the battering I would have took if I was wrong. If Jamie Vardy had gone off at Crystal Palace, that would have been my Mikel Antonio moment. I think. 59 for myself. Double Liverpool defensive. Robbo, Trent, McCarthy, Rafinha in on wild card. Bamford in wild card. Fernandes assist. Salah captain blank. Average is obviously overall was 37 for the week. Low for 2 reasons. 1, the loss of obviously multiple players. And 2, obviously, nobody was captain, went off. Nobody, basically. So, 6-pointer for Fernandes. If you captain Fernandes, I guess you're the winner of the game week from that perspective. But I think the real winners will be those who steamed into Leeds this week and picked up 2 or 3. You went, what, 2 or 3?
I had double Bamford and Dallas, and I didn't steam into them. I'm just sitting on them for the last few weeks.
But it's 20 points, and there's some people who've got 6 players and haven't been able to get the 20 points. Not a joke. I've seen a 12-pointer from a very good FPL manager this week. So shit happens. I mean, Dallas himself equaled that. You only have to look at the team of the week, right? I mean, there's 6 Leeds players in the team of the week.
Yeah.
Which sums up. The actual team of the week was only 107 points. Normally it's massive, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Really low. Harrison and Rafinha, I think the only 2 midfielders to hit to 8 points. So really low scoring game week. Don't beat yourself up if it went wrong. I know it's really frustrating when you put all the planning in and then shit hits the fan, but it's out of your control. As I always say, if your decision making is okay, what happens afterwards is out of your control, and it's bad luck.
It is indeed.
Bad luck in a game.
So we had 2 bits of information yesterday. One was Manchester City tweeting that the team are back in training yesterday afternoon. And we also had the Premier League saying that they are comfortable with their COVID-19 protocols as it stands at the moment. And they are not having any discussions around a circuit breaker or breaking the season or whatever else. And the irony was in the end of that statement, from what I've seen, they said, we'll revisit this in a month or at the end of the month or something like that. Because that's pretty much seems bonkers.
My question would be, what do you expect the Premier League to say?
No,
does anybody expect the Premier League to say we're panicking or?
No. But to then say, look, we'll worry about this in a month when the situation is changing on a day-to-day basis seems a little bit silly. And to completely dismiss it out of hand, which I don't know if it's fair to say they've completely dismissed it out of hand, but seems a little bit silly. So,
look, let's be really honest here. The Prime Minister of our country said go and enjoy Christmas and then cancelled it a week later.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't read too much into it. They're doing what they believe is right and saying, look, I do think in terms of the Everton City and Tottenham-Fulham games being postponed, I think the close proximity of the games has had a higher contribution to the fact they've been postponed, actually. And if it had been sort of a week to prepare, like if Fulham weren't playing till the weekend, I mean, I wouldn't say that their game in Burnley is in doubt. This time yesterday, I would have said, I can't see Man City playing at Chelsea, but then bang, their training ground's back open. So presumably the situation is not that bad. And we might even end up with 10 fixtures in game week 17. So I feel a little bit more confident about games continuing than I did this time yesterday.
Correct, me too.
But I still would not be confident that that's it, we're okay, this was bad and shit won't change. Shit definitely could change. With that in mind, 18-19 could very much change.
Yeah, so, we do have the situation of the FA Cup in between 17 and 18. So the gap between 17
and the League Cup
18
semis
is well, there's only a couple of them, but there's
I'm one of them.
Yeah, you are. There is quite a gap between the games now. With the FA Cup as well, you'd think that a lot of the first team players for a lot of the Premier League clubs will be rested or
massively.
So it now gives everybody a little bit of a chance to kind of have a circuit breaker without having a circuit breaker, if you know what I mean, with the FA Cup. So I'm with you. I'm much more confident that football will go on. I still think there'll be postponements. There'll be the odd one here and there. But obviously, we'd much rather be in a situation where football carries on and we have the odd postponements and we only end up with 8-10 fixtures that we need to catch up than maybe 20 or 25 or something, which could be very difficult. So what do you think is going to happen now with the fixtures?
It's difficult to say. And I think...
Of course. This is almost like predict Pep's lineup.
Well, a little bit. There's certain things we know. I mean, for example, I think Chelsea-Manchester City this Sunday is a big deal to what happens next. If the game goes on, then in theory, Manchester City's rearranged games with Aston Villa from game week 1 and Everton from this game week could be played on Champions League nights where it's spread over 4 weeks. And then that's City up to date, essentially, although obviously they could have more dates they need to rearrange because of cup competitions, which complicates it a little bit. But then actually, the situation for City doesn't look as bad as compared to if the Chelsea game is off and the Man United Cup semi-finals off, then they're fucked, basically. I could already say now they'll have to play twice in 3 days at some point, almost a certainty. So I think it might be a lot of waiting on to what happens with that in terms of the importance of, do we have to get a Man City fixture into 18-19? As I've said several times, 18-19 is not a winter break. It is designed for the TV companies as some sort of compensation for the product they ended up showing at the end of last season, which is now the same as the product they're showing this season, to have 10 games at unique start times. So they don't want, ideally, to have game week 19 to have 7 midweek fixtures, for example, where that's going to cock that up a little bit. I think we're in a position now where if that has to happen, it has to happen. But actually, we're not there yet. Now, if we get to there and it has to happen, there are multiple things that could change in 18-19, honestly, to the extent that the teams you think have doubles in 19 might have not. They might have a single fixture and play in game week 18. Similarly, those who don't have a double in 19 could suddenly land with a double. Tottenham Hotspur being one of them, for example, who suddenly, from nowhere, could land with a double of Sheffield United and Fulham, which then you look at and go, genuinely, can I have a better triple captaincy opportunity than that, even with what we see from Tottenham offensively at the moment? And then that knock on, because Tottenham and Fulham might have to go into that game week, means, for example, that Fulham and Manchester United might go into 18. It might mean that Liverpool and Burnley goes to 18. It might mean that Burnley and Manchester United goes into 19. You're lost already, right? You get the point. That to summarise, what you know right now, know it, but almost forget it. And the strongest possible advice I can give to anybody right now is those who are planning to free hit in game week 18. Do not hit that submit free hit button until the day of the games, which I think is January the 12th or something. Yep. By all means, play around mythically with it, write it down on paper, forget price rises, forget price falls. None of that is more important than knowing that you might not need to use that chip. So, for example, for me, if those movements of fixtures that I suggested happen and suddenly I've got Bruno Fernandes and 3 Liverpool players playing in a blank game week, I ain't free hitting anymore. Similarly, if games are going to get postponed and there's only 2 fixtures, for example, which are, let's just say, Sheffield United versus Newcastle and Wolves versus Everton, I'm getting a player into captain and I'm moving on. I'll have one player. I don't care.
Where you said I'm lost. 50% of me is lost, but 50% of me, actually more of me, 90% of me doesn't care. I've put myself in a situation, and I understand this is actually quite difficult for people because of time zones and time differences, that I can react when I have the exact information. On top of that, there's going to be a lot of content designed to help people navigate through it, and we will be one of those pieces of content you can come to. When we know, we will be producing content saying, this is the situation, this is what you can potentially do. And so there will be good advice and good information out there. I understand for people where the deadlines are like 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. and stuff, it's difficult to navigate that way. But there will be good content out there. And like you're saying, with the free hit, save it till the last possible minute. The other thing is, as well, is if you're playing around with the free hit, as it stands at the moment, we know that there are 5 fixtures, 5 matches. So my plan at the moment is to have try and get to 3 players from each of the 5 games as a baseline. So that if any one fixture, listen, I'm not going to take credit. There's a certain Aston Villa correspondent that I heard talking about how you spread yourself so that if one fixture goes, you can still get 11 out. Mr. Hopcroft, a shout out to him, because he was talking about how you spread yourselves to cover it. And I just thought that's a very, very good point to make. Although if we're pulling the trigger very close to the end, we'd hope that we would know.
Yeah, like we would hope to know that Everton and Manchester City is going to get postponed 2 hours after an FPL deadline when they're playing that night. So
it's crazy that both postponements have happened at 3 p.m-ish, give or take, on the day of the fixture, as opposed to earlier in the day.
Well, at least like with Tottenham Fulham, I think we had a high indication the day before that something could get postponed, essentially. Whereas with the City game, it was literally rumour at 3:15, and the game was off like half hour later. That was it. So from a fantasy perspective, there was nothing that anybody could do about it. There was literally no way you could have known that was going to happen. In terms of those for the free hit 18, you're absolutely spot on. The other thing I would advise, and it's obviously a while away, But the idea of going, I'm going to go with Max Kilman because he's 4.1 and save the bench, forget it. I'm pitting 15 players. And if I end up with a bench, if I end up with a bench that scores 12, 15 points that week, so be it. Because of exactly what you've said. So I think I'd be all in strategy, pick the 3 teams that I fancy, the 5 teams from each of the games and just steam into them. It might be a case, for example, Villa Tottenham, you go, I'll go Grealish, Son and Kane, for example. But generally speaking, almost go with an all-in strategy. But we'll come back to that. Please, I know I'm going to hear people saying, I'll need my free hit back. Don't submit the free hit chip. Please don't do it.
Yeah.
With that in mind, for this weekend as well, obviously thinking 1 free transfer for this game week, I'm highly likely to do absolutely nothing, even if that means that I free hit in 18 and I've burnt that transfer and wasted a possible transfer for 19. Because again, if I get to 18 and I need to put the armband on Pedro Neto because that's the player that I want, I'm going to buy him.
Right. I'm with you on that as well, but there's a certain player in my squad that I just really want to bomb out at the moment. So
who's that, sir?
Che Adams. And the fact that Mikel Antonio with his big juicy thighs came back into the team and came off the bench, came back into the squad and came off the bench, makes it a very easy potential move. But doing it this week with Everton away versus just holding on for the week after, no big deal, really. I can hold on, so I probably will, but I do want to bomb out Che Adams.
Well, I would say for a little bit of clarity for 19, I looked through all the potential fixtures for January, and I think there's only one team that is probably extremely unlikely to have a game moved even a day, for example, and that is West Ham. I think West Ham's double in 19 is safe, so therefore it is for West Brom as well. And I think it's safe for Southampton and Leeds as well. The others are a little bit more questionable. So if you do want to buy a player for 19 now, I'd recommend those would be target teams. West Ham, West Brom, Southampton, Leeds.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Adams to Antonio, in theory, if you want to bomb him out, are you just annoyed because your centre-half who you'd never seen play before kicked him in the back of the head?
Oh, it was a pretty good shot, to be honest with you.
Some volley, I tell you, poor fella.
Ouch. Yeah. We'll talk about that when we get to the games. Let's rattle down the 8 games that we did have and what we did learn from them, if anything. It was probably one of the
shittest weeks of the season.
Game weeks.
Do you know what? I hope
quality.
The Premier League have learned that this game week shouldn't happen anymore. When we say we want to keep our Christmas fixtures, do you know what us fans think? We want to keep Boxing Day and we want to keep a New Year's Day. That's what we want to keep. We don't actually care about the bit in the middle. So that's the keeping Christmas for us. Boxing Day, New Year's Day, because there is no doubt in terms of team selections and quality. Have you watched a good football match in the last 3 days? Because I haven't. Leeds fans will disagree. I understand that. But generally, no. Right. So the quality is down.
It's been very... it's been...
You can't blame the players, right?
No. There's a lot of rotation, especially, and it's not just this midweek, but even at the weekend gone, there wasn't. The last couple of game weeks has been pretty meh. Yeah, let's rattle down some of these games, and the number of 1-1s, 1-0s, and 0-0s is a lot. So, starting with Crystal Palace Leicester as the first game, 1-1. Again, what do you call it? Heavily rotated Leicester against a fairly full strength Crystal Palace.
I think they made 5 changes as well, Palace. They left out like Eze and stuff. I was quite impressed with Leicester in the start of the game to the extent that it was a second team, but it really was a B team for Leicester. And they completely dominated. I mean, a half hour in, I think they had like 75% of the ball, which Palace don't mind that sort of thing anyway. But they dictated the game. And obviously, look, if Iheanacho scores the penalty, we're potentially talking about a very different game. Palace's equaliser was very well worked. Good finish from Zaha. I think Schmeichel will be quite disappointed with it from that perspective. They hung in the game. Harvey Barnes, interestingly, and he's the sort of player that frustrates, but he feels like very quietly 7, 8, just very quietly had a couple of goals. And interestingly and importantly for Harvey Barnes, it's now 4 starts in a row. And he's played 90 minutes in 3 of them, playing 83 minutes in the other. And that spells promising for me for anybody who's looking to buy him. And at 6.7, with a double game week on the horizon, I think he might land in a few teams by game week 19.
Yeah.
It probably will burn, just so you know.
The problem with Harvey Barnes has never been ability or his potential as an FPL asset. It's literally been minutes.
Yeah,
it's literally been minutes. And not just in this game, but in Sky, he's frustrated a lot of people just because he's not getting the minutes. If he was to play 90 minutes week in, week out, or you told me I'll get 6 out of 7 90 minutes, I'd own a Harvey Barnes at 6.7 million. Took his finish well. Yeah, decent.
That's encouraging. So I think he's the one that would stand out from Leicester. Jamie Vardy's definitely a captainable option this week, although you might be scared that the game's not till Sunday. The advice to that is stick the vice captaincy on Bruno Fernandes. That's the best way to cover this sort of problem at the moment. Good fixture for them at the weekend. Obviously, Newcastle did it right last night. We'd expect Leicester to go there with 6 days rest and then go and pick their strongest team and move on from there. Their double, if it happens, and I'm pretty confident that Leicester's probably will, Southampton and Chelsea. I'm not sure it's as difficult as it looks in terms of Southampton likely missing Vestergaard at the moment.
Yeah.
Danny Ings only just come back from injury. We'll speak about them in a little bit. Chelsea's away form. We've lost the last 3 away from home, haven't they? So I know Leicester's home form's not been great, but you do jump off the other side of Leicester as well with Everton, Leeds, Fulham. So a decent fixture before and afterwards. I wouldn't be surprised if we get close to 19 and Harvey Barnes is becoming a bit of a Barnes train. Not the old-fashioned Ashley Barnes train, but a Harvey Barnes train. We might see it.
I'd rather Harvey Barnes than James Maddison, for example, right now, any day of the
week. I agree, actually. And Maddison, I think, was proving quite popular for wildcarders. He missed the game with a slight injury, but should be okay for the weekend. So in which case, look, I think you obviously hold in that case. Yeah. For Palace, it's a good point. But they've got Sheffield United this weekend. And at the moment, you feel like if any team was going to lose to Sheffield United, it'd probably be Palace. And I mean that in the kindest way, just because inconsistencies. But they'll be consistent enough to stay up, ironically. They've, I guess, having lost 7-0 to Liverpool the other week and got battered at Villa, this is a good point for them. They'll want to win that game at the weekend because there are tough fixtures to come. I don't foresee them being in trouble of going down anymore. I think they're going to be all right. From an FPL perspective, I don't think they hold any interest, do they?
Nah. Sheffield United are the only team that can lose to Sheffield United at the moment as it stands, mate. And I think they'd struggle to do that. Let's talk about Chelsea Villa. We thought this was going to be a tight game, like not a walk in the park for Villa. You predicted a 1-1. I thought maybe Villa might even nick it 2-1, but a 1-1 was probably a fair result. And that's what ended up playing out as well here. They're still spluttering, our Chelsea.
What I found was particularly interesting analysing this game and thinking about it afterwards was the difference in mentalities between the two managers. Of Lampard appeared to kind of rush Reece James and Ben Chilwell into the Arsenal game. Ben Chilwell played again when he's got 2 other left backs. Seems a bit weird, but obviously rotated the team heavily, and it's still a strong Chelsea team. Do you know what I mean? Bringing in Giroud, Hudson-Odoi and the like of that. It's still a very good team. And Villa just went, go again.
Yeah.
And Lampard's comments about protecting players and Dean Smith's comments of, I've never had to withdraw a player from a game because of fatigue. You just pick your strongest team and go again. And Villa probably finished stronger. I think Chelsea had lots of the ball, which played into, in an odd way, it probably worked from Villa for that perspective, that they could sit off the game a little bit and regroup and recover and have 5 minutes here and there to say, okay, we're gonna sit, because you are going to be tired. I don't care, 48 hours after a game. Once you're in the game situation, mentality switches and adrenaline gets you going through a lot of it. And Villa have intense players like McGinn, Grealish, etc., who are just going to go for
energy.
it.
Yeah,
exactly. They're not mid-game going to be thinking, fucking hell, I played 2 days ago. They're just going to go for it.
No, of course.
I think after Villa equalised, a lot of us thought they'd go on and win the game. I certainly did. And it could have gone either way. I think it was probably a draw was about right in the end. I think first thing to summarise is we need to start taking Villa very seriously.
I already have been. I don't know.
No, well, when I say seriously,
from an FPL point of view or from a
we've had a lot of people talk about certain teams challenging for top 4 this year and stuff. For Villa, they will have to keep their best players fit. But if they do, honestly, fourth is not beyond them because they have a superstar footballer and it's complemented by others who want to do the very best for him, like Watkins and McGinn, and Target at left back. If Grealish plays that side, always plays to his strengths. They've got games in hand.
Come back in still.
Exactly. I mean, that probably means Grealish going back to the left. I know there's a bit of frustration for Grealish owners at the moment. I could understand that to an extent, but I wouldn't be surprised if he popped off at Old Trafford on Friday. Not at all. I think Villa might go to United and get something, actually.
I don't think it's fair. I think if Grealish was 9 or 9.5 million, I think it's fair. When he started the season at 7.5, 8, and now he's at 8 or whatever, I think it's not fair to get frustrated with him because he's a cheap asset. Most people have bought him well below 8 million. I think it's all right. I think you've got to take the rough with the smooth. And that's 7. I think between now and the end of the season, Villa will have another day where they bang in 5-6 goals in a single fixture like they did against Liverpool, when it will all just click because they're creating so many chances. Off the other side of 19, mate, I want to work out a way to get to double, if not triple Villa. Double, triple Villa.
Depends the way it lands, doesn't it? For example.
Yeah.
With Grealish, obviously, since that Liverpool game, he's had 2 single-figure returns, double pointer, single-figure returns for 2, double, 2 single figures, double. So it's Manchester United away, he's due double pointer. I'm just saying, if you believe in that kind of statistical crap. But he still offers amazing value. I think Jack Grealish was one that I've been because he wasn't part of the strategy plans, but always knowing that because of his price, I could always go back to him. And I think knowing as well that not so much this would happen, but his value would dip because he's not got the double in 19 and so many are obviously heading that way that he becomes expendable. So he's had a price drop last night to 7.7. I mean, we can all go back if we want to, right? It's not a problem. Villa not on radar from that perspective. Chelsea, I mean, you can't be concerned if you're Ben Chilwell and he's got another assist. Great.
Yeah.
Reece James now has a hamstring knock, but I feel like my interpretation was if he'd had to play, he probably could have played. That they changed Zuma and Thiago Silva as well. This wasn't their strongest 11. I wouldn't read too much into it. However, bad noises are starting to be said about Lampard from within Chelsea's fan base. And it's turned very quickly from a month ago, sitting here and people saying, give him a chance, etc. I can feel within Chelsea's fan base it beginning to turn a little bit and is one to keep an eye on because suddenly they've fallen off a drift, really, through a difficult fixture run.
Let's talk about for one manager in trouble to another that's now starting to turn things around is Mikel Arteta. And this is what I thought would happen at the Arsenal-Brighton game, that they would go back in terms of a grudge match and nick it. I feel like some people may look at Arsenal's 3 behind Aubameyang in Smith Rowe, Saka and Martinelli and think he's rotating players. But we talked about it on the previous show. He's basically thought, fuck off these guys that are not playing for me in the shirt. Let me get these youngsters in and let them play. And I believe that they are good enough. Maybe they haven't got the experience, so they're not at their peak, these young players. But Martinelli and Saka and what have you are good talent. Saka's had a little price rise now up to 5.2. You told me he was going to play week in, week out. I'd want him ahead of even maybe Souček. I'd prefer to have Saka at the moment, for example.
Not having that. But decent.
I would because Souček is never going to get you an assist. Just never going to get you an assist. Whereas
but he'll probably get more goals than Saka.
Possibly, maybe, yeah. I mean, I think Saka's growing in confidence in terms of his attacking returns, and he's playing. He's not playing all over the place like a left back, wing back here, there, and everywhere. He is playing as a 3 behind the front man. But yeah, Arsenal suddenly with 2 wins in a row, for all the people that were like, maybe, are now looking at the fixtures and the last 2 results and thinking, yeah, all right, maybe it is time to steam in. And especially those who are going to free hit in 18 are thinking, yeah, Leno is almost an easy pick there.
I don't think anybody's thinking steaming to Arsenal from an FPL perspective.
Sorry, for a free hit. I should be specific.
Oh, for free on the free
18,
hit, I'll probably have 3 of them if that's what I end up doing. Yeah. And Saka will almost definitely be one of them, by the way. I quite agree with that.
Yeah,
I
Saka,
think
Leno for me are very easy picks.
Yeah, I mean, Rob Holding's cheap enough. The fear with Rob Holding, who obviously is got a 9-pointer at the week. I think he got top bonus. He must have. We don't actually know factually if David Luiz is ill or if it's been jettisoned with Willian. Gabriel, we assume, will be back for Palace. And then is it a case, could it be Gabriel and Pablo Mari? So I think centre-halves you still can't buy. Tierney is safe as at left back, but I don't know if you want to play that price. Bellerin appears to have the nod over Maitland-Niles. Martinelli could also be interesting.
4.9.
Yeah. He's a Duracell bunny. But I think I would prefer to go with Saka if you were going that way. I agree with you. I feel like he now senses the responsibility of his role in the team. And the assist for Lacazette's goal was absolutely brilliant from a position of absolutely nothing to be able to spin and drive at a defender. How many times do you see an Arsenal player actually run at someone this year and then have the composure to play the right pass at the right time? It's bad defensively from Brighton, but we'll come back to that. So I think on the day for 18 for free hitters, yes, there will be interest in Arsenal, partly because of Palace's performances as well. But otherwise, I don't think you're suddenly thinking, oh, there's 2 wins, West Brom away this weekend, I want to go and buy them. That's not on the agenda, is it? Unless you are planning towards 18, in which case my recommendation would be to roll a transfer this week anyway, unless you're fucked. So no, you're not buying Arsenal at the moment, and you definitely ain't buying Brighton. I don't.
If Brighton lose, if Fulham beat their game in hand, they've got quite an easy game in hand. Let's be honest. Well, maybe
I'm
not.
just going to ignore that. This is the bit where I'm meant to make a cackle laughter or something, but I'm going to ignore it, sir.
Brighton could end up in the bottom 3, or would be in the bottom 3 if Fulham won their game in hand. I know that's a big what if, but just.
Brighton are sleepwalking into a relegation battle, and that's always the scary thing. You think, oh, they're safe. They got enough good players. They'll do enough. They won 1 game in 2020, which was in injury time against Arsenal. They've won 5 Premier League games all season. All calendar year in 2020. Won 5 Premier League games in 2020, which is less. It's less than Sheffield United, by the way. But they've only lost 13 out of 36, 37 games or so. So where do you... They've had a huge number of draws. I think it's 16 draws in the calendar year. It depends where you sit on the fence of that. Because let's be honest, if you draw every week in the Premier League, that's going to keep you up this year. That's not going to happen. You are going to lose games. But I noticed that I think since February, outside the big 6 teams, which obviously includes Arsenal, they've lost to Southampton once and lost to Everton once. And I don't think they've lost to anybody else. So you could make a case to say, since February, they've only lost to top half teams. Arsenal will still finish top half, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
So does that mean, therefore, they'll keep getting results against the lesser likes? From an FPL perspective, they ain't worth touching. And if I say that the mood's changing towards Lampard at Chelsea, it's worse at Brighton with Potter, where there is mass frustration with the tactics, his team selection. I mean, the selection from Arsenal just depressed them. Brad Lewington, one of our patrons, he had a rant before the game even started. He was so gutted about the team that he'd picked.
Yeah, every week I asked him to explain. Sam, when he tweets, it's always like, I don't know what Potter's doing here.
I asked Brad to explain, and I wish I hadn't, because I got it back with both barrels. And one of the things, I know it wasn't aimed at me, but he went on a Mia Mourinho rant about Potter, basically. One of the things he said as well that's beginning to frustrate Brighton fans is his mannerism. It's like he's got no energy or anything, or no passion to what he's doing. It was after the Southampton game when they had the really dodgy VAR call. He was really calm and composed about it, which I think at the time we were like, oh, fair game. You've taken that on the chin. Well done to you. But I think Brighton fans want to see a bit of, come on. Because that's what they need at the moment. Because it's sleepwalking. They need Lewis Dunk as captain to get hold of them and get that team moving forward in the right direction. There are a lot of players underperforming. They have a decent squad. They have one of the best squads of the bottom 7 or 8. But you don't trust them to win games of football at the moment.
No. Let's talk about Burnley 1, Sheffield United 0, because Sheffield United is a team that we also don't trust to win a game of football at all. Again, a game that we thought would probably end up as it did.
Everybody predicted 1-0 Burnley for this. Nobody predicted. Even the Sheffield United fans, even Tomo tweeted, he said 1-0.
Yeah.
Everybody. This game was no surprise. Anybody who was watching that game when Ben Mee scored probably thought, I'll turn this off now. Although why you would have picked to watch that game.
Yeah, of all the 3 games to pick. Yeah. Loughton is still getting interest, which is decent because I own him. So if he goes up to 4.5, I like that bit of value. Thank you very much. And now that Charlie Taylor's out with a hammy, I think Loughton's the next one that people may be looking at to go to for that price point.
Well, if Taylor is out with a hammy, which I assume that's what it is, and that presumably rules him out for a month or so minimum, you would think normally, unless he's felt it and gone, boss, I'm not comfortable with this, which I don't imagine at Burnley that's the case. I think you just play till you die, don't you? I imagine he's going to be out for around a month or so. Eric Peters is 4.3 million. And has a history of getting attacking returns at random points for Burnley. So I would, if you were going now, just double check on the sources of Taylor's injury, but I think we would go for Peters. What I would urge, though, to go back for those who are thinking, oh, I want to replace Taylor for a Burnley defender for game week 19, there's a possibility that Burnley might not have a double even in 19. Highly likely they will. And it could even be that it's Manchester United rather than Liverpool, so it looks a little bit better on paper. And it might be they play in 18, in which case it covers you both. But I've got Charlie Taylor. My intention is to hold that and make the decision once I've got more information on fixtures. There could be nothing worse than I buy Peters and suddenly they play Liverpool in 18 and don't play in 19, which is a possibility. Small, but a possibility. So personally, I wouldn't go down that route of buying Burnley yet to replace Taylor. I think if I had to make a move this week, I'd more look at Balbuena, who we'll probably talk about in a little bit, Suj, because I know people were worried that he got left out the other night. For Sheffield United, I mean, it's not an FPL conversation at all. If you've got Brewster or Burke on your bench, great. We had the Invincibles in 2004. They what are we going to call this lot? Because we have to get to the stage where it's becoming a possibility. I'm not joking.
You know, there's a TV show, the Undateables.
Unwinnables? What are they? Unwinnables?
Just call them what they are, Sheffield United.
the problem they've got now, it's a similar problem that Huddersfield and a few others down the years have had. For every single club that plays them, home or away, now believes we have to beat you. Yeah. And they're not keeping clean sheets and they're not scoring goals, which means in every single game, they are in trouble, including the next couple they've got, which are Palace and Newcastle. I'm afraid to say, Blades fans, it's over and you will be going down.
Indeed. Let's talk about Southampton 0, West Ham 0. And yes, to be honest, my timeline in terms of mentions and DMs has been around Soufal, Balbuena, rotation, whatever else. Obviously, Bowen was benched. Noble was benched, but I don't think he was first choice anyway. And we've seen it in the last couple of games. We've had a little bit of rotation. If anybody thinks that Balbuena is losing his spot to Dawson and Fredericks is playing ahead of Soufal, it's just rotation during this busy period. I don't see any reason why we will not get Soufal and Balbuena and Co will not be back up to a regular starting team very soon. It's like, why after so much consistency for so long? And we haven't lost many games recently. We've drawn a lot. We drew Palace, drew Southampton, drew Brighton. I get that. But why would we suddenly start changing a team that's not in crisis or losing games? It's just rotation.
I think Soufal, no problem at all. And that's the one I went with in the end on Wildcard. I liked Rob Green's comment on Amazon called Fredericks Spongehead. He removed his pathetic header at goal. He called him Spongehead. So he's now He's forever now. Ryan Fredericks is Crapid Spongehead.
That's a superhero cartoon character if ever there was one.
Crapid Spongehead. Soufal should be fine.
Yeah.
I can't see an issue there at all. That the only thing on Balbuena to switch back, and I didn't watch your game. I was keeping more an eye on the other three because I knew you'd be watching it. Dawson got man of the match. Am I right in saying that?
I didn't. I don't know.
I think he did. I think he got man of the match. Did was that just for the volley on Che Adams, or did he actually play well?
So the first, this was a dull game of football. I have to be honest with you. There was nothing really exciting that happened in the first half. Southampton were definitely better in the first half and created more chances. Walcott was a threat, and him and Walker-Peters on that right-hand side actually have a really good understanding, and they play really well together. Gineppo on the other side is just... I don't rate Gineppo. I don't think he's that good, and he was basically ineffective. But with Southampton, they obviously play with that high intensity. They were winning the ball back, but they had a few chances, but it wasn't really that clear-cut. But they were definitely the more forward-thinking team in that first half. What kind of sort of happened is that they hit you with this high intensity in the first 20, 25 minutes or what have you. And if they don't score, or if they don't get ahead, then suddenly they don't really have a plan B or a plan C. So it's kind of like, oh shit, hang on a second. We're pressing these guys and we're not getting anywhere. What do we do now? And that's how it felt like to me what happened with Southampton. They kind of ran out of ideas. The second half, West Ham were much the better team. Credit to Moisey here for thinking, you know what, I'm going to make my substitutions, and every substitution he made was an attacking substitution, bringing on Bowen and Antonio and what have you. So we then decided in the second half, it was clear in at half time, we'd been in and be like, you know what are we doing here? This game's here for the taking. If we increase our intensity, we can create chances and take the game to Southampton. And we did. And in the second half, Southampton didn't create as much, anywhere near as much. But as the game went on, there was only really going to be one winner based on the football, which I thought was going to be West Ham. But when it's 0-0, anyone can nick it. But it really felt like it was just both sides were playing out a 0-0 draw, and we'll have a little shadow jab and hook here, but we're not really going to go for it. It was dull. Yeah,
I mean, in the end, the big chance was Ben Rama's, wasn't it? Which was a great save from McCarthy. I mean, even that chance came about somewhat fortuitously, didn't it? It was a
bounced up and down, bobbled around, and what have you.
It felt like, from what I've read and seen, that 0-0 was about right.
Yeah, I think so in the end.
But Southampton.
But I was happy. I have to say, I was happy with what I saw in the second half. Like, it felt like at half time, people were like, hang on a second, what are we doing here? We came out in the second half with more intensity and played better. And that's what I want to see. I want to see the team adapt to what's happening on the pitch.
Back four, I take it as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Any word on for Ben Johnson, those who steamed in at 3.9 after his goal? Any word there, Suj?
Well, I didn't see him. Did you see him? I didn't see him. All we saw was there was a great bit in the and a few people tweeted it, right? Mikel Antonio, the Amazon camera panned to him in the first half when he was sitting on the bench, and he was sitting on a hot water bottle, and you can't hear what they're saying, but all you could see is someone was saying something to him, and all he did was pulled out his hot water bottle and waved at the guy and stuck it back under his arse. And it was like, I was like, so this guy said, hey, Mikel, do you want to jog up and down the touchline and warm up a little bit? And he's just got his hot water bottle up and said, to be honest, mate, this is warming me up. This will do. Thank you very much. And now I don't need to jog up and down the touchline.
I guess he couldn't find a good brasserie in Southampton like he had the one from Stratford Shopping Centre the other day.
He no sign of Ben Johnson, I'm afraid. Yeah.
Do you think you'll stay back four? Because that's what actually impacts Johnson, isn't it, at the moment?
Yes. Well, Everton will be a tougher game. And I don't want to. The second part of this, I don't want to. I want to go back to a 5.
So you'd rather Johnson played left wing back? Or is there a solution here that Cresswell plays there and he brings Dawson in with Balbuena and
possibly, yeah.
Because I think Dawson's performance has got Balbuena owners concerned. You think you'd be all right?
I think he'll be all right. I mean, it probably might not be fair to drop Dawson off the back of it, but one swallow does not make a spring or summer or whatever it is. So, yeah, I think Balbuena will come back in. I'll be honest with you, but it's fine margins here. I mean, it's not like Balbuena is clearly a massively better player than Dawson, or Dawson's clearly a massive better player than Balbuena. They're both much of a muchness, really.
I think the Balbuena should be okay. However, the note of caution that I would add is that West Ham's double in game week 19 is Burnley and West Bromwich Albion, and you will have to deal with high aerial balls coming into the box. And Dawson is very, very good in the air. And we've seen a constant theme, particularly against Burnley this year, of teams picking players specifically because they are good aerially. It's happened all season where you've had Tottenham's team against Burnley, and there's been one since you go, oh, he hasn't played. I think Yerry Mina came in, had missed a while for Everton, and suddenly he was back for the Burnley game. It's been, we need to get our big aerial guys. And your best header of the ball at that football club will now be Dawson, I would have thought. So maybe, I don't know if that should make people worried or not. Personally, like I said, I think Balbuena will be all right. I think for you now, if that's at home to Burnley, home to West Brom, if you're picking your back four because of what you're concerned about, what you might have to do heading the ball rather than actually how you play with the ball, would be a little bit concerning, but it also wouldn't overly surprise me. So that's the scary bit, I think, for Balbuena owners. You want to go Adams to Antonio, do you?
I mean, I wasn't overly impressed with Southampton. Having said that, look, Armstrong didn't play. I don't think Gineppo's up to much. Walcott and Walker-Peters on the right-hand side do offer a real threat. They're both actually good. Walcott's still got his quite a bit of his pace. He hasn't lost it. Danny Ings, first game back, seemed all right. Him and Antonio had a good chat at the end of the game about whose hamstring was more fucked, I think. I don't know what they were talking about. Armstrong's still the one I'd go to with Southampton because of the price more than anything else. But Che Adams, for me, hooked off after 55 minutes. Not convinced that I want to keep him longer term. I want to move him on.
They haven't scored.
I could also go to Ollie Watkins in a couple of weeks as well, who's a good option. So it's not like there's nowhere else I can go.
I'd say that's low priority for me in terms of moving channels. For me, I would look at it and go, if I'm in a blessed position when I get to 19 and I'm like, oh, okay, I've landed great. I can move from Che Adams to Antonio. I will probably do that, to be honest. They haven't scored since Walcott's goal at Arsenal in the first half of game week 13. So they're 3.5 games without a goal now, which is a little bit concerning. It's worth saying Danny Ings missed all that period and is now back. So no major concerns on them from my perspective.
I heard in the commentary that against Fulham the week before, they only had 3 shots in the whole game.
It was an awful game. I told you that. It was a bad game. And
this was awful as well. It's like, you know what? But the thing is, then you look at Southampton historically, and I still trust them. I still think Southampton on their day are still one of the best teams in the league.
For me, it's quite simple. They are the best team in the league without the ball, arguably, in terms of how they press off the ball, get in your face, play at 100 mile an hour. And I spoke about this weeks ago, about the idea that when we've obviously had European teams that played midweek, and actually the rest of the Premier League's normally played weekend. And once we hit December, January, and everybody's playing 3 times a week, you might find that for the likes of Southampton, it will become more difficult. Mm-hmm. There are flips to that. So for every point of that, you go, well, look how Leeds played at West Brom. And I get that. But in terms of the intensity of Southampton, the way they play is very different to Leeds, who Leeds is all about the football and forward runners. A lot of Southampton's is off the ball. So without the ball. So tempo of games can feel very different. And that's why I think it's been flat for them. At Fulham, I thought it was very flat because they had the spine of the team missing, right? Romeo and Ings were back for them against yourselves. Ings is presumably not 100% fit, and it was important to get minutes in. They'll have a good break before Liverpool on Monday, and they'll give Liverpool a good game on Monday. That's 6 days rest?
Yep.
That's good for Southampton. Then it's the cup game. Then they've got a break till the double, where you would hope, again, intensity of 4-day break is a little bit better for them. And then obviously FA Cup afterwards, they can go 100% for those 2 games. So there's probably a little bit of concern of, suddenly we've been getting injuries as well. Just a few players from Saints to obviously highlight as well. Bednarek is now in team of the season. 4.7 was popular for a lot of people on wildcard. I decided to go for McCarthy. I think you made the same call, Suj.
Yeah, I'd owned McCarthy for a while
Okay.
already, so yeah.
Cole Peters, I binned because I was worried about the booking situation. And he picked up his 4th in this game. It's tightrope now. I'm not saying get rid. I'm saying you got to keep your fingers crossed.
Backup.
That's it. You got to keep your fingers crossed. Next game, sir.
Yeah, let's segue in because you talked about.
I don't know how we talked about that shit game for so much.
You talked about Southampton not having shots and a team that do have a lot of shots. Well, it doesn't help when your own defender fucking puts the ball in the back of the net like Sawyers did.
Oh, Romain Sawyers, you hero.
That to happen so early for West Brom was literally, that was just the white flag for Leeds to say, you know what? Okay, we're 1 up nice and early. Let's just fucking go for it. It literally
and that's
was,
what's brilliant about Leeds. Yeah.
And it is. I don't see how I'm going to be selling Bamford, and I don't see how I'm going to be selling Dallas for the rest of the season. I feel like now that they're in, I'm going to have the odd blank, but there are going to be weeks where I'm going to fill my boots with double-digit returns regularly. Yeah.
You're absolutely right about the white flag thing. I think the goal stunned West Brom, and after obviously getting such a great result at Anfield, probably went into the game thinking, from a strategic point of view, you go in and sit with low block again. I think even by the end, Leeds had 75% possession excess, which is no surprise. So West Brom went in with a similar strategy. The difference was Leeds obviously scored the goals. And actually, to be fair, a little bit like in the Liverpool game where we said, well, how many big saves did Johnston really make? How many big chances did Liverpool really have? The one story of caution on this game is Leeds had six shit and some good shots on target. Johnston's made 1 save in the game. Leeds' shot count of 14 is average for them. I mean, it's higher for most teams, but for them, actually, they're normally pushing nearer 20 in a lot of games.
Yep.
So I think West Brom didn't move strategically from the game, but the own goal and the manner of it, which is hysterically laughable, unless you're a Baggies fan, you laughed at the goal, basically, meant exactly what you said. Leeds smelt blood, and for West Brom, it was a blood. And as soon as it's gone 2-0, then it's game over for them. And what you have to love and admire about Leeds is they don't change. We spoke about this after the United game when they lost 6-2. They played a game whether it's 1-0 or 6-2 the same way. Principles. You could see, I mean, in the second half, when they had the moment where they nearly conceded, where Meslier played it out and Dean Garnish could have scored. Like, Bielsa is doing his nut about what they're doing strategically at certain points in the game. He's still shouting at them the same whether it's 5-0 or 0-0. He don't care because it's the principle and the philosophy of how the football team plays. And when it works, and it goes very well like this, where they dominate the game, they don't give the opposition chances, you can have all their players go off.
Yeah, exactly.
As simple as that. It's shared around.
Yeah, there was chat about Rodrigo versus Bamford and Harrison and Rafinha, etc. This game didn't really answer anyone
not really, because
they all returned, and they're all at similar prices. And if you have an asset, I think then the advice is just stick with it because their turn will come around eventually. They're all going to get their opportunity to pick up points. But Dallas now, and I have to admit that his points for me did come off the bench as opposed to me picking him to start with. But it was strategic, wasn't it? It's like I chose Lowton because I thought the chance of a clean sheet against Sheffield United was higher. I trusted Big Sam to maybe give him trouble at set pieces, but I put Dallas as first sub ahead of Soufal, and off he comes off the bench, and on we go.
It's fine, mate. I get that. I get that on the set piece thing with West Brom, by the way, which is easy to say afterwards. Oh, they basically didn't really have any, James. Get that. Dallas is definitely the standout one defensively. There's a lot of people asking if we're kind of sleeping on Alioski. Alioski, he's a winger, basically. So if he plays left back, yeah, of course, there's a potential for him to get returns. The fear with him is going to be, quite simply, when Llorente or Koch come back, or both, or I think Koch's out for quite a while. It's like my marriage, basically. Cooper's not too far away. Llorente was meant to be fit last week, so he must be very close. But if Cooper's suddenly back fit, it could very easily be Cooper and Llorente at centre back. Dallas goes back to left back. Ayling goes right back, and Alioski be out the team. and it wouldn't surprise me. I think he's the one, once players are fit or expendable, Alioski might get you through to the double. He might. But I think it will be a close call, and I don't think it's worth the risk. Rafinha and Harrison, I'm a little bit sick of talking about these two because the best thing you can do, honestly, is get a coin and flip it. I do this every week. I feel like I went for Rafinha. I nearly went for both. I could have gone for Harrison. And if someone was asking me now, JR, toss a coin. It could be either. I think you've seen in Rafinha's goal the power of what he's capable of. It felt like a Mahrez goal, didn't it? Coming in off the right and whipping it left-footed. But then Harrison, I think he's got, at the moment, more intelligence to get into dangerous positions as per shown by the goal that he scored. So, I mean, where's your preference? But both or either are reasonable. Yeah. They're the two best players at that price, put it that way.
There is a certain manager who, without a doubt, is the greatest of all time in Sir Alex Ferguson, in my opinion, anyway.
It's his birthday today.
Who's celebrating his 79th birthday today. One of the things his teams did was come from late and keep winning games. And now, with Liverpool's result yesterday, I think if they win their game in hand or what have you, then they go joint with Liverpool.
It must be very close, I'll be honest.
Yeah, it was 2 points before.
My team didn't pick up any points this week, so I've really not looked at the league table.
I mean, yeah, they'll get... There are people that are criticising 94th minute winners and cheeky little points in 94 minutes. Trust me, Sir Alex Ferguson's sides did it enough and won enough titles. And, United are moving and motoring along nicely. Marcus Rashford at 9.5 million. I want. Yes, please. Thank you very much.
To compliment Bruno?
Yes. Take both. Thank you very much. Rashford is like a striker and Bruno's like a midfielder. Rashford's OOP, in my opinion. In a strange way that like the Aubameyangs and Salahs of the world are all OOP, wide forwards. Salah is basically a forward, let's be honest, but he's a midfielder in FPL. Rashford's the same, right? I think Rashford at 9.5 million offers the same incredible value that Heung-min Son does at his value as well. And I want Rashford.
So you've got Son. You want to move to Rashford?
I want both, truth be told. I want both.
That's difficult when you want a Bruno and you need another captaincy coverage. Exactly.
And Salah.
I mean, that forward... It can be done, don't get me wrong, but you have to make the sacrifices elsewhere. Have you got Trent and Robbo or just Robbo?
Just Robbo.
I mean, to be honest, even carrying one of them makes that getting that midfield difficult, right?
Very difficult. And then when you think you want the likes of Grealish as well, at the moment, I'd take Rashford over Son at the moment.
Recency bias?
Perhaps, yes. I mean, it would have been interesting to see how Tottenham fared against Fulham because with your recent spluttering performances, if you'd kicked out of it with a really good, convincing win against Fulham, I think people might have said, yeah, it was worth it holding Son and Kane. I mean, there were a lot of good FPL managers that bought both of those two bastards this week as well and took hits to get both Kane and Son in. That's unfortunate as hell, isn't it?
As much as even I've bashed Spurs recently, Son and Kane this weekend are very viable for captaincy, right? Yeah. With Salah at Southampton, Bruno against Villa, City away to Chelsea. On paper, as much as we've just praised Leeds, we've scored 30 and conceded 30, right? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, even though it's a Mourinho game, I wouldn't be surprised if that game finished 3-2 or something. And that could go either way, by the way. So Son and Kane, very reasonable in terms of captaincy predictions this week. I'm probably going to lean into captaining Kane now, actually, ironically.
Interesting.
Having got him. For me, on the wild card, I think I would have gone Rashford and not had any Spurs if he didn't have the shoulder concern.
Knock.
I think I would have ended up going Rashford and Chris Wood, ironically. So you win some, you lose some. But I probably wish I was sitting in that position now because definitely can't be in because there's a possibility now that they'll play in the blank and the double is a possibility. Fixtures afterwards, they walk straight into Sheffield United at home afterwards. Then it's Arsenal away, Southampton at home, Everton at home. And look, to be honest, it was another home game where they struggled. Wolves shouldn't have lost this game. But they're there, aren't they? They're there. Mm-hmm. And how many times did we say to Liverpool last year, even though they're well clear, they ain't been at their best and they're there.
Yeah.
And Liverpool have just dropped 4 points that nobody would have dreamed that they didn't win at least one of those 2 games, right? And United have done what you said, late winner, nicked it. Admittedly, I mean, 0-0 would have been a fair summary of the game, to be honest. And they're in with a shout, and the fixtures aren't too bad. And suddenly, Liverpool United, game week 19, is beginning to look absolutely massive. I don't think they can win this title, personally. But Liverpool keep fucking up. Can they give everybody a chance, actually? Ironically, since I said it was done and dusted, of course.
Yeah, they will. And let's talk about them.
Wolves really unfortunate, just to say. Roman Say's absolutely brilliant at centre-half. I wouldn't mind betting that he now gets a good run back in that team. And actually, defensive fixtures they've got coming up are good, Wolves. Love Neto as a player. Vitinha, who played the first hour in front of Matinho and Neves, was very good. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets more minutes going forward. But actually, there might be a run of clean sheets for Wolves that comes back around. They shouldn't have lost this game.
I didn't watch yesterday's Newcastle 0, Liverpool 0 game, but you obviously did. Now, Robbo, max bonus points again. Do you know what was interesting with this? I didn't watch the game, but then I saw obviously the goal alerts. Well, there was no goal alerts, but full-time alert coming up as 0-0. And I said, I bet you Andy Robertson. I didn't say it out loud to my wife. She would have looked at me a bit weird. But I thought in my head, I bet you Andy Robertson's got max bonus points. Logged into the app. What happened? Andy Robertson's got max bonus points. Guy's a machine. This is the 3rd season in a row. The guy is a machine. And his ownership is still relatively low for a player that's just caking up the points, 23%. Yeah. Like if it was a midfielder at his price scoring his points, it wouldn't be at 23%, I feel.
He's heading towards another 200-point season by the looks of it. He's going to get very close anyway. Brilliant asset. I think at the moment you probably do favour him over Trent. I don't think you can... It's difficult to avoid that feeling at the moment, actually, that you would just prefer to have Robertson. And that's part of the reason, thinking, because of his involvement in games, the amount of crosses he puts into the box, etc. Whereas Trent gives away the ball more than Robertson because he goes a bit more direct and stuff. All adds into Robertson on the bonus a little bit more. Trent, I mean, I love him, right? He'll I said it last week, I'll say it again. You could have 2 free kicks in the game, put them both in the top bin, and you're looking at an 18-pointer or something. And that's why I'd still rather hold that, because Trent will go like 2-2-15, for example. Exactly, right? Yeah. And that's always the appeal of him. Matip's injury is not as bad as I'd originally thought it was. There were reports yesterday and the day before that his season might be over, which with Gomez and Van Dijk in the same situation, you would have gone, oh my God. Klopp said he's out for 3 weeks is now the reported time frame. So a lot better than I think original expectation on that, which may mean that Liverpool don't buy. However, they must buy a centre-half. They have to buy a centre-half. And to be honest, the window opens tomorrow. They should be buying a centre-half tomorrow. They should have it identified. They should be having the announcement at 6 a.m. in the morning, new signing, whoever it is, just get it done. Because as much as we rave about them, and I particularly do, that at centre-half yesterday is going to cause them a massive problem. That first half's the best I've seen Callum Wilson play this season, ironically. He gave Liverpool murders with his running off the ball. And there's a couple of times he turned Phillips inside out. And Callum Wilson doesn't really do that to players. He's not good enough. Reece Williams not ready either. I think Phillips was picked again because of thinking Newcastle's big chances will probably come from set pieces. But Newcastle, unusually for them in this game, put a bit of pressure on the ball higher up the pitch. Normally they just sit off. But in the first half, they tried to pinch it high. And they were brave, unusually for Newcastle. I think Newcastle fans would be quite happy with what they saw last night. Okay, eventually it becomes very back to the wall and defensive. But I think you accept that later in the game against the Liverpool if you haven't gone in front. They did all right, actually, Newcastle. You wouldn't go buying their FPL assets. But I think it's more the concern for Liverpool defensively, if they have to play Phillips or Reece Williams regularly, is going to be a big problem. Because Fabinho, love him as a player, but he's obviously a midfield player, really. His concentration moments, which will cost them goals, even as a Trent and Robbo, and I can say that. And if this continues, to be honest, once I get out of 19, if that double still happens, I'll probably be, as it stands, I'll probably get rid of Trent, actually. I'm not beyond looking at that as a possibility It's not right. Thiago being back will help them massively, even defensively, because he will give them such great control of football matches. He's so good. Whenever you're in a problem, just give him the ball. And he will just go and run the game for you. He's arguably the best on the planet on it.
It's not only, it's not just Sir Alex Ferguson's birthday today. It's Steve Bruce's birthday as well.
Happy birthday,
so Newcastle
Steve
fans,
Bruce.
if you're happy with what happened yesterday, send the man a card, because I doubt he's on Twitter, so you can't tweet at him. Maybe he's on MySpace or something like that. So go and find him on there.
You have to say, obviously, Knighthoods went out last night as well. Shout out to my mate Jimmy Greaves, who finally got an MBE. Although not everybody on Knighthood list impressed my missus, who referred to one person who's been given a knighthood of all he does is drive a car. Congratulations, Lewis Hamilton.
For a very long time.
He's got a knighthood for driving a car. To be fair, when she said it like that, I was like, I don't really know what to say to that.
Well, yeah, he's probably the best driver of a car ever. But
I get that.
We're going to do a few Twitter questions, James, before we wrap up this episode. And I'm only going to pick 3 or 4 questions that have nothing to do with FPL. And there have been a few because it's the end of the season. So
while you're looking for them,
generally
to summarise, for the majority of the people, yes, even those planning to use the free hit in 18, it's not a bad idea to do nothing this week. Honestly.
Let it roll.
Not a bad idea to do nothing.
So Jay Kassam, who's been to a few of our lives as well. Jay, hope you're doing all right. And this is a naughty question, James. Should we all just pack it in and go home? You should already be at home.
I was going to say.
Jay, is my answer to that. You shouldn't be at your house. So pack it in and go. You should already be in your ass.
I've left the house about 10 times in 9 months. What do you want me to do? We are all at home, aren't we?
Yeah.
No, except that it's a game. And I know for a lot of people listening, but I'm in cash leagues and all that. Listen, if you're into content like ours and other great content creators, videos, whatever, etc., you're probably already at advantage over many of your mini league rivals. So what wasn't your advantage this week may well be your advantage in weeks to come. For me personally, I love the chaos. This week it went in my favour. It might, in Sky, for example, it very much didn't this week. But in FPL, it did. You win some, you lose some. It's part of the fun and the drama. Admittedly, this is very different drama. But what I would say is, I'm obviously a bit of a planning head. Most are frustrated because they put a lot of time into the planning and then you don't even get the game happens. I realise it's frustrating. Understand at the moment that anything can happen. And you know what? It's probably not worth that amount of time to put into it.
Amber Redmond. Amber, we haven't answered one of your questions for a little while, so we'll do it today. What's the second most baffling FPL situation you've been in?
What a great question. I presume this is the first one.
Well, there was a point earlier this season, probably a game week 4 or 5, I'd ended up with 3 West Ham players in my squad. I don't know how that has crept up on me. 3 seasons ago, starting the season with Berahino. I don't know why I did dumb stuff like that. There's all sorts of baffling situations that we've ended up in, for sure.
I think, it's probably more how have I ended up with that player in my squad? Buying Chris Metham on a hit for like Blake Gameweek and stuff like that. Yeah. You just think back and go, what were you doing? But in terms from the strategy perspective, I think I just adjust is my thinking. So yellow is chaos at the moment, but it's never been worse from the planning perspective. Particularly me and you, Suj, are both on the strategy of free hit 18, bench boost 19. One of the other questions I saw in there, which I'll answer now, you can give them a shout out whoever asked it, is has your strategy changed in terms of your intention to use the free hit and the bench boost? I can't even answer that. I have no idea. If I get to 19 and the bench boost looks shit, I won't do it. I just go, right, I've got 11 doublers. Great, let's go.
Mike Lesage, what's the most impressive goal you've seen scored against your team?
Oh, I saw that question. I thought about it. And to be honest, I've wiped most of them from my memory.
Surely one of the Barca goals might have been pretty impressive.
Not in terms of best ever. One that came to my mind, oddly, and I stick with it because it was the first one that came to my mind, was a volley by Muzzy, is it? At Filbert Street back in 1998. Free kick coming. Les Ferdinand got a great clearance in on the volley. and it went straight out to Muzzy. Is it about 30 yards? And he just volleyed it first time back in the top bin. I mean, that was the one that came to mind. So maybe I'll go with that, but I need to give that some proper thought. Ask me later if I've changed my mind.
Yeah. I think Rooney scored a couple of pearlers against us, so more than likely going to be
scored
Wayne
2
Rooney.
From the halfway line against you.
Exactly.
Mate.
I think I'm going to give it to Wayne Rooney, and you take your pick, whichever you think was the best.
Against you, Gareth Bale, last minute 2013.
Maybe you should go with
Lanzini's
goal. Yeah, go on.
You're not predictable,
Luke,
are you?
We've got here. I owe him an apology. Not a question as such. I'm in a money league that Suj is also in. Can you ask him to up his game, as he's mid-table and below me? It's like he's not even trying. Well, my apologies, but Luke, it's not how you start, it's how you finish.
Yeah.
And the last question of the show, James, I'm going to leave it on a very much more positive note. And this is coming from our friend Danny, FPL Sick of It, in Singapore. Hi, boys. A non-FPL related question. What's the single best thing or moment to happen to you both in 2020?
Does it have to be in relation to this podcast?
Nah.
Oh, because all the good things have been to do with this podcast, to be honest. You go first.
I'll be honest with you. There was there's been a lot. This year has been, and when I look back on it as a whole, it's been a great year, in fact, because there was a moment in time when the first lockdown kicked in at the end of March or whatever time it was, where the company that we both have worked in and run and whatever else, there's 30 of us here, could have easily just gone belly up and tits up, right? And off the back of it, we've got to the end of the year where we've had a good year from a company point of view, so no one's had to lose their jobs, and we're all here. We've managed to move office into a nicer space, which means the podcast is going to do better. The first lockdown, that summer term, school term, work from home. So I sit next to my son every day for an entire 2.5, 3 month period, which I've never got to do. So I had the ability to experience that. With the podcast, we've done some incredibly fun and dumb shit as well, like 24-hour live stream and getting up to Manchester road trip and all that kind of stuff. So I look back at it all and I found it easy to pull the positives from it. And it's been a very good year. So I could list you a bunch of other stuff that's happened that's been bad, but there's been a lot that I think has helped us resettle and refocus into what is important and what is not. I understand that a lot of people have had very difficult years as well. So yeah, you've got to put it into context, but there's so much that's been positive, but I think a realignment of what's important has been something that's really good that's come out of this year. And we've come to the end of it, touch wood and blessed, about to go into even more of another tier 4 lockdown for so many people, but resilient enough that I know that we have what it takes to cope with it.
Very well said, sir. For myself, definitely echo kind of what you said. I mean, I've got so much more time with my son that I wouldn't have had otherwise if I'd been... I mean, I can shut down the podcast now and he's there in the living room because he's off nursery this week. So I can go and say hello and then go and do the edit. So little things like that, beautiful, brilliant. Rest of the year, personally, the shit other than that, like most people, I get that. I think the best moment for me would obviously be taking this up full time and starting, to be honest, not even so much starting Patreon, but the reaction to us doing Patreon. Because I think when that happened, it could have gone one or two ways. And as soon as you use the word Patreon, it becomes a dirty word for people, or you're monetizing all that thing. I think the fact that we explained why we were doing it, what we were going to do with it, and were open and fair about it, meant that the reaction was quite good. And I think that was positive. Our name doesn't generally get thrown about in terms of, oh, they're money grabbers or whatever. And of course, we haven't changed the free content that we did anyway. We're just doing, we're doing even more now that I do the deadline streams as well. So I think the reaction to Patreon and people being accepting of us, what we do, why we do it, the fact that generally all we try and do is help people, whether these pods help or make your life worse, I don't know. But we try to help. That's a big plus. The 24-hour stream from a selfish person was some achievement to be raising £6,000 for the NHS. When I don't even know how we got to 5, and I don't know how my body was still part of me a couple of days later because I didn't even know who I was the next day. And that wasn't so much because of beer, it was just because I was exhausted. Manchester road trip, absolutely brilliant. The community we built up with through the Patreon now, brilliant. For myself as well, obviously helping out with the Champ Man streams, which I dived onto last night as well because poor Luke from the Wolfpack, his cat had passed away. So I just messaged Andy Teachmo and said, "Look, I'll step in if you want me to do it. I'm there." And that community, the Champ Man, the way it's helped each other and all the good vibes about it. So there have been a lot of positives this year, and I think in life, that's all you can try and do is try and take the best of what you've got. And I think it is fair to say you and I, Suj, generally have had a good year in dark times, and we're aware that we've been lucky.
Of course. You know what? There was a part of me yesterday that when there was talk about the season getting a 2-week break or whatever, that there was a dark part of me that was like, I don't mind, because we're going to come up with some really funky, fun content to fill the gap. I was
already thinking about it. What can we do?
It straight away was like, okay, if there's going to be a void, I wonder what we can do. And I had a few cheeky ideas as well. So maybe we'll save those for the summer.
I don't want to know. Keep it to yourself.
Yeah. So with that, thank you very much for your questions. And thank you very much for tuning in, not just today, but for the entire year in 2020. Go and enjoy your New Year's Eve wherever you may be. Celebrate in style and with your families and loved ones and whatever else you can. We'll be back at you with content in 2021 as we always are. Please stay safe wherever you are.
Don't end the podcast when I spent 2 minutes talking about Patreon. You ain't even plugged it.
Yeah, not today. Tomorrow. It's a tomorrow thing. Stay safe, my friends. Ciao for now.
Love you all. Happy New Year, everyone. Cue music, please, man child.